Nevada, a land of stark contrasts, stretching out like a forgotten, sun-scorched canvas. To the untrained eye, it might appear like a vast expanse of empty highways, flashing neon lights, and unyielding desert heat. The kind of place you drive through without a second thought. But there is more to Nevada than meets the eye, more than any tourist brochure could ever capture. Underneath the dust and heat, beneath the glaring sun and the long, lonely stretches of road, lies a shadowed history fractures in time, and secrets buried deep within the earth. What you won't find on a map are the old military tunnels, the kind where no one remembers digging. Hidden underground ruins, where clocks still tick, though no one is alive to wind them. And in the depths of Nevada's vast wilderness, there is a lake with a strange secret, a man-made object that still runs, even though it sank decades ago, never to be seen again. This is not a story for the curious tourist. These are the stories uncovered in declassified government documents, the ones lost to the world in forgotten radio signals and mysterious, recovered footage. The kind of stories that do not make it into the public eye because they are too strange, too unsettling for most to comprehend. So, as the sun sets over Nevada, turn off the lights. Plug in your headphones. Hold your breath. The secrets of Nevada are not hidden in Area 51, and they are not buried deep in military bunkers. No, the real secrets are buried in places the government forgot to erase. Places that keep telling their stories over and over again. The most disturbing mysteries, the ones that still unfold in Nevada today, are buried in these forgotten corners of the state. And what if I told you they are still happening, right now, not in some dusty, long-forgotten corner of a government archive, but right beneath the ground you walk on? Welcome to the hidden world of Nevada's most chilling, unexplainable phenomena. Mystery number 1: Mercury Facility Collapse. Just a few miles north of Las Vegas, behind a rusted chain-link fence topped with barbed wire, lies a place few have heard of. Mercury, a once thriving desert town that was swallowed whole by the Nevada test site, a place where over 900 nuclear bombs were detonated. In 1987, something happened there that still raises more questions than answers. Official records chalk it up to a containment failure, an accident that cracked the Earth's surface wider than expected. But if you ask the men who were there, the ones who refuse to speak of it even today, they will tell you something else. They won't tell you about cracks in the earth, but about doors that should never have been found. March 10th, 1987. A team of engineers at the Nevada test site were conducting a routine low-yield underground detonation near Area 20. It was part of a series of scheduled tests, designed to simulate seismic activity and study the effects on reinforced tunnel systems. Standard procedure. But 3 seconds after detonation, everything went wrong. The monitors spiked not from the blast, but from something deeper. Something far more troubling. Sensors placed nearly 300 feet underground began to report strange vibrations. One of the engineers described it as a hollow tremor, the kind you might feel if you struck an empty barrel. No solid echo, just the eerie feeling that something beneath them was not right. As the vibrations settled, the team moved in to assess the damage. The explosion had caused a collapse in one of the seismic tunnels, but it was not like anything they had seen before. The tunnel did not cave in from the blast. It fell from below. The collapse did not start at the detonation site, it started further beneath, as if something deep under the surface had triggered it. They sent down a heat probe to investigate, but what they found was not what they expected. The tunnel, which had been reinforced decades earlier, had collapsed straight down, as if something had pulled it from beneath. It was not just a regular collapse. No, this felt like something or someone had been trying to keep something contained. And what they uncovered next was beyond anything they were prepared for. Buried beneath the rubble, they found a tunnel junction massive, wide enough to fit a vehicle through, its walls smooth and rounded, not blasted or crumbled like the tunnels they were used to. There were no blueprints for this level, no construction orders, no documentation, and none of the men who had worked in Mercury since the 1960s had ever seen it before. It was like something had been built beneath them without anyone ever knowing. Something wrong. The walls were not made of concrete, like the tunnels they were familiar with. No, these walls were composed of a strange composite metal alloy. And when they looked closer, they found something even more disturbing. The alloy did not rust, it did not vibrate, and most unsettling of all, it absorbed light. The moment they entered the corridor, the sound of their footsteps changed. The air felt still, unnervingly still. No echo, no ambient noise, Just silence. And that is when it hit them. They were not dealing with a simple underground collapse. They were dealing with something far more sinister. The next day, the site was immediately shut down. The engineers were reassigned. Those who remained were told to sign new non-disclosure agreements. But the mystery did not end there. 2 months later, in May of 1987, an anomaly was detected by a geophysicist working on routine seismic maintenance. Low-frequency pulses. They were repeated every 18 minutes, and they did not come from the usual sources. They did not originate from any nearby tectonic shifts, nor were they connected to surface activity. The pulses came from 60 meters beneath the site, from a depth that no one had expected to find anything. Even stranger, the pulse patterns were not random, they sounded mechanical, like the thrum of a machine running in the depths of the earth. The anomaly persisted for weeks. But then the tone of the pulses shifted. The frequency changed ever so slightly, and when they converted the signal to audio, the noise that came through was unsettling. It sounded like metal dragging across stone. It was like someone was dragging something beneath the earth, as though it was trying to break free. But it did not end there. The project director at the time, a man with top-level clearance, wrote a single word in his private notes, breaching. Whatever was causing the pulses, it was not supposed to be found. It was not supposed to be there at all. And whatever it was not built by us. By the end of that year, the government buried the site again, sealing off the corridor with composite foam and reinforcing it with steel mesh. But that was not enough. In 1993, a minor earthquake near the same zone triggered another chain of events, this time, not from seismic motion, but from an inexplicable pressure release. Documents obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request revealed one chilling line in an internal memo: avoid further excavation. Acoustic data suggests displacement continues. And that is when the rumors began to circulate. Some engineers swore that it was not a collapse at all. It was containment. Containment of something that should not have been found. Something they were never meant to uncover. One former facility worker, now in his 70s, agreed to speak to an oral history project in 2009. When asked about the events at Mercury in 1987, he paused for a long time, so long that the interviewer thought the call had been disconnected. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and hesitant. "We were digging for simulations," he said, "but someone else had already been digging." When pressed further, he muttered something that sent chills down the interviewer's spine. "There were doors down there. Just not ours." And that is when the story took a darker turn. Mercury, a forgotten town, was just one part of the Nevada desert that had secrets buried deep under its surface. Secrets that were never meant to resurface, but were already starting to be uncovered, piece by piece. Mystery number 2 Street. Thomastown emerges from underwater. Some places are meant to be forgotten. Entire histories erased and buried, tucked away beneath the earth, or in this case, beneath a vast, lifeless body of water. But sometimes, time has a way of pulling things from the depths, things that were meant to stay buried. Lake Mead. To most, it is just a sprawling reservoir created by the construction of the Hoover Dam. But beneath its tranquil waters lies a ghost town, an entire town that was swallowed up in the name of progress. Street. Thomas, Nevada. Founded in 1865 by Mormon settlers, this was once a thriving community. Schools, a hotel, a general store, even a small railroad spur. A bustling town with over 500 residents, built along the banks of the muddy river. But by 1938, all of it was gone, washed away by the rising waters of the newly completed Hoover Dam, which created Lake Mead. Or so they thought. The residents were forced to evacuate as the water from the dam flooded the valley, submerging everything in its path. Once the last boat left and the final home was abandoned, they thought the town would sink into oblivion, its ruins lost to time. What remained of Street? Thomas was left to be consumed by the lake, never to be seen again. The town's final resident, Hugh Lord, famously paddled away from his porch in a boat as the water reached its doorstep. His last look at the town he called home. But the desert, it seems, does not forget so easily. For over 60 years, Street. Thomas remained hidden, submerged, as Lake Mead's waters rose and fell, quietly sealing its fate. But in 2002, something unexpected happened. A prolonged drought combined with rising water demands caused Lake Mead to drop to historically low levels. And for the first time in more than 6 decades, the remnants of Street. Thomas reemerged from the depths, like a ghost from the past. But what they found was not just a collection of ruins. It was not just old wood and crumbled bricks. No, what they found shocked even the most seasoned archaeologists. The town was not just a faded memory. It was still there, almost perfectly intact. The beams, the walls, and even some of the signage had survived. The structures did not look like they had been underwater for over 6 decades. Some buildings still had fresh carvings, ropes that had not rotted away, and even footprints leading in and out of the town's schoolhouse. The most disturbing discovery, however, came when a team of environmental historians from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, began to document the site. Their goal was to catalog erosion patterns and study potential artifacts that had been buried for so long. But as they ventured inside the ruins of the church, something stopped them cold. There, carved into the stone foundation, were symbols. Symbols that should not have been there. They were not simple markings or graffiti, they were intricate, geometric designs that did not match any known iconography from the region. Some of them looked almost like crop circle patterns, overlapping in concentric rings, precise and intentional. But that was not even the strangest part. The soil samples taken from around these markings showed no signs of aquatic residue, no indication that the walls had ever been submerged in water at all. As if the ruins had been left untouched, preserved by something far more unnatural than the flooding of a dam. And then came the eerie footage. In 2006, a Discovery Channel crew filming a documentary on the drought and the history of the lake brought in drones and night vision cameras to record the town's re-emerged ruins. One drone, for reasons that defied explanation, malfunctioned and went offline. The other 2 cameras, however, continued to record. But when the footage was reviewed, the footage from one of the drones showed something that chilled even the most hardened crew members. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the camera, which had been scanning the southern edge of the ruins, picked up something strange. A figure. Tall, humanoid, but strangely bent. It was not moving. It was just standing there in the mud. And when the camera zoomed in on the figure, it did not reflect heat like a normal body would. No, this thing, whatever it was absorbing heat, pulling it in rather than emitting it. And then, just as quickly as it appeared, the feed cut out. The footage was never aired. The team made sure of it. The episode that aired did not even mention the figure. But the crew members who had witnessed it in person knew something had been captured. Something they could not explain. In the years that followed, locals began to share stories of Street Thomas, stories that had long been whispered, even before the town was submerged. Some of the Mojave tribe elders who lived in the area spoke of an ancient valley known as the Land That Murmurs. According to their oral history, the area around Street Thomas was considered forbidden long before the town was even built. The valley was a place where the land itself seemed to speak back when left undisturbed. One elder explained, it was never supposed to stay dry. That place is covered for a reason. Something in the ground belongs to the water. In 2014, sonar scans of Lake Mead revealed something even stranger. Beneath the site of Street Thomas, there appeared to be a sealed corridor, buried beneath the lake bed. The scan showed a tunnel structure, an artificial corridor, one that did not match any natural cave formations in the area. The 90-degree angles, the straight lines, it was something man-made, but nothing was recorded in any government flood plan records. Even more unsettling was the fact that the tunnel did not point toward the dam, but away from it, directly into the desert. So, what was it? What lies buried beneath the old town of Street Thomas, and why was it hidden beneath the waters for so long? The town had disappeared once, but in its re-emergence, it began to ask questions that no one was prepared to answer. The land, it seemed, was not done speaking. Mystery number 3: Gerlac, the ground that burns without fire. The Black Rock Desert, stretching out like a barren, cracked mirror under the relentless Nevada sun, is a place where the land whispers in ways that few can comprehend. Most know it today as the home of the Burning Man Festival, a celebration of art, creativity, and the human spirit. But long before it became an event for thousands of revelers, there was something else lurking in the dust, a heat that does not come from fire. A heat that pulses from the earth itself, quiet, unseen, and alive. If you are driving through the desert near the small town of Gerlac, the landscape might seem normal at first. Sparse vegetation, dry lake beds, and rolling hills of dust. But then, in certain parts of the desert, the ground starts to act strangely. And if you are one of the few people brave enough to venture out, you will notice something eerie. The soil gets hot, really hot, and not in the way you might expect. It started in the late 1970s when residents of Gerlac began reporting strange occurrences in the soil around the area. At first, it was dismissed as just another quirk of Nevada's geothermal activity. After all, the state is famous for its hot springs and thermal features. But as time passed, it became clear that what was happening here was not natural. Certain patches of the Earth's circular areas, only a few meters in diameter, began to heat up in a way that could not be explained by normal geothermal processes. These patches were not connected to any visible springs, nor did they emit the sulfurous smells that typically accompany geothermal activity. There was no steam rising from the ground, no geysers erupting in the distance. Just the ground, heating up an invisible, silent burn. By 1981, the Bureau of Land Management (BLM) had recorded surface temperatures reaching 163 degrees Fahrenheit, measured in an area with no visible sun exposure. The heat was so intense that it warped plastic, melted shoes, and caused animals to avoid the area entirely. And yet, there was no scientific explanation. The area did not show any signs of volcanic activity, and there were no known geothermal reservoirs beneath the surface. The anomaly was reported, but it was never seriously investigated. The official reason, no clear threat. But the locals knew better. They had long been wary of a particular region of the desert, known unofficially as Sector D. This was an off-grid area, southwest of Gerlac, near the base of the Calico Mountains. It was a place people avoided. Campers stayed away. Hunters would not even think of setting foot there. Cattle ranchers refused to let their herds graze near the area, and for good reason no one could explain why the ground felt wrong. In 1993, a geologist named Frank Tierney, who had come to Gerlac on a geothermal prospecting mission, decided to drill into the area, hoping to uncover the source of the mysterious heat. What he found was far from ordinary. Of the 12 bore samples he took, only 6 returned intact. The others had melted drill tips, warped sensors, and the most disturbing part, rhythmic tremors beneath the ground, not seismic in nature, but oddly regular. It was as if something deep within the earth was pulsing, breathing, alive. Tierney's final entry, written before his funding was abruptly pulled, contained just one cryptic line: "Whatever's under there, it is not magma. It breathes." But it did not stop there. In 2007, during the Burning Man Festival, an artist named Lena Corwin set up a metal installation near the edge of the mapped hot zone. It was a work of art, meant to stand tall over a desert landscape of dry, cracked earth. But before noon, the structure began to warp. There was no fire, no open flame, no sunlight hitting it in any way that could explain the deformation. The heat came from underneath, from the ground itself. Thermal imaging taken with a drone revealed a circular burn spreading beneath the surface of the ground, almost as if there was an inverted flame lying just beneath the earth. The structure, which had stood firm only hours before, now looked as though it had been placed in the center of an invisible fire. When researchers from the University of Nevada, Reno, analyzed the data from this incident, they could not find any heat signature consistent with known geothermal activity. The soil, dry and parched, was too dry, as though it had absorbed the energy from beneath and then sealed it away, only to release it when disturbed. In 2011, a student named Joel Reyes attempted to install a passive thermal grid across the area to study the anomaly. He placed sensors at 3 locations, 2 near known hot zones and 1 near the mysterious Sector D. The first 2 sensors gave normal readings, but the third, placed in the heart of Sector D, did something unexpected. For 6 hours, the sensor transmitted data. Then, without warning, it went offline. When Reyes retrieved the device, he was stunned to find that the casing had partially melted on the inside. But it was the data that was even more perplexing. Alongside normal temperature readings, there was a single, unreadable audio file stored on the device's memory card. The metadata showed the file was created at 4 a.m., but the format was corrupted beyond repair. Attempts to decode the file triggered memory errors on 3 separate systems. One audio specialist who reviewed the file said the waveform looked like the start of a voice, faint and reversed, like a message trying to be heard, but stretched downward, as if it was something that should not be listened to. The elders from the Paiute Shoshone tribes of the area had their own stories. They spoke of a place near the Calico Mountains where the ground was known to whisper. Not with the voice of spirits, but something much older, something that could hear the quietest breath and respond in kind. One elder described it this way: "Warmth that does not come from the sun is a warning." and it seems that the earth beneath Gerlac had been giving its own warning for years. What lay beneath the surface was alive in a way no one could explain, pulsing with energy that was not of this world. In 2017, an FOIA request uncovered a classified BLM report from 1989 titled Thermal Zones of Unexplained Origin, specifically referring to the Black Rock subsection. The report had been largely redacted, but the remaining pages contained chilling notes, one of which was an ominous recommendation: recommend continued restriction of exploratory permits. Zone appears geologically silent, but heat exchange active. Unknown source, unknown depth. And though the report was filed under the Bureau of Land Management, the line that was left unmarked at the very bottom of the final page was signed by two parties, one from the Department of Energy and one from Nellis Air Force Base. So what is the source of this heat? What is pulsing beneath the earth, waiting for someone to uncover its secret? Some things are better left buried. But in Nevada, the earth never stays quiet for long. Mystery number 4 Tonopah test ranged the mysterious voices beneath the runway. Not all mysteries are hidden in the sand or beneath the surface of a lake. Some are buried deep within the earth, beneath layers of concrete, steel, and decades of secrecy. The Tonopah Test Range, a remote military installation in the Nevada desert, is known for its stealth aircraft experiments, radar systems, and cutting-edge technology. But beneath the surface of this military base, there lies an eerie mystery, one that has baffled engineers, contractors, and even military personnel for years. At first glance, Tonopah seems like any other military test site. The expansive runway, designed to support some of the world's most advanced aircraft, is over 12,000 feet long, built in the 1970s to handle top-secret operations. But beneath that runway is something that does not belong. A hollow layer, discovered during initial geological surveys, stretches for nearly half a mile below the surface, sitting 22 meters beneath the concrete. The official explanation was simple: it was a natural fault chamber, or perhaps a lava tube. But when engineers were authorized to drill into the area, something strange started to happen. The project was a standard operation until the recordings began. In 2006, a contractor working beneath Hangar 4 during routine maintenance on underground cabling first heard what he described as muffled speech. The facility was closed for the weekend, and there was no obvious source for the sound. Assuming it was just interference from nearby radio equipment, the contractor placed a parabolic microphone beneath one of the access grates, hoping to isolate the source. But when he listened to the recording, what he heard made his skin crawl. It was not interference. It was not static. It was human speech, muffled and distorted, but undeniably human. The cadence of the words matched speech patterns, but they were indecipherable. The contractor submitted the recording to his supervisor, who dismissed it as equipment malfunction, but the file never left his mind. Then, in 2010, another anomaly was detected. As part of a systems integrity test, thermal microphones were embedded beneath the far north section of the runway. Over the course of 72 hours, 3 strange incidents occurred. First, a faint female voice whispered something unintelligible. Then a countdown began: 10, 9, 8, stopping abruptly at 6, only to repeat itself over and over. But the most unsettling of all was the final recording: a male voice, speaking what sounded like pilot jargon, as if it were coming from an aircraft that had long since left the air. When the timestamp on the recording was reviewed, it read January 12, 1968. But here was the problem. The microphone was not activated until April 2010. And the file that had captured the voice was stored under a log number that did not exist. The file appeared briefly in the system, and then just as mysteriously it vanished. Access to the thermal grid logs was soon restricted to a Department of Defense server, and all inquiries about the recordings were stonewalled. But the voices did not stop there. Contractors and engineers working at the site continued to hear strange sounds from below the runway, especially in the lower frequencies. Some of the sounds resembled breathing or distant footsteps, as if something or someone was beneath the concrete. And then there were the rumors that persisted among the long-term contractors. Rumors that some of the most sensitive maintenance corridors at Tonopah had been sealed off. These corridors, which had once appeared on blueprints as subsidence stabilizers, had mysteriously disappeared from current maps. No photographs of the interiors existed, and many of the old access hatches had been removed or welded shut. One of the most peculiar instances occurred in 2012, when an entry hatch near the decommissioned fuel depot was mysteriously removed. The base issued a short statement about structural instability, but workers on site claimed there had been no cracks or damage reported. The truth, they whispered, was far stranger. Those who had worked in the area for years would tell you that there were sounds in the lower comms channels, sounds of breathing, even when the base was without power. The strange phenomenon was not just a fleeting glitch. It was something more, something embedded in the very structure of the runway itself. As rumors swirled, one particularly disturbing incident came to light. In 1992, a pilot made an emergency landing at Tonopah after his plane's internal communications system failed. The moment his plane touched down, something strange happened. The cockpit radio crackled to life, not from the control tower, not from the base's operations room, but from the runway itself. The voice on the radio was distant, almost garbled, but the message was clear: test flight complete. Return sequence 90. No visuals. Confirmed detonation. But there was no test flight scheduled that night. There was no sequence 90 in the manifest. There were no detonations planned. The voice did not belong to anyone on the base. And yet, it was as real as the wind that swept across the runway. The tape was immediately erased, the report buried in secrecy, but the memory lingered. In 2018, declassified defense audio research files revealed that an experimental project had been conducted near Tonopah in the early 1980s, testing whether ground vibrations could retain memory patterns. The idea was simple: could concrete and air pockets function like a primitive hard drive? Storing echoes of the past, the results of the trial were deemed inconclusive, but one line, scrawled hastily in the margin of the report, sent shivers down the spine of those who read it. We did not create the recordings. We found them. No agency took responsibility for the recordings. No further records on the echo inversion trial were ever released. But the mysterious voices beneath Tonopah persisted. And some people still believe that beneath the runway, buried deep under layers of concrete, there exists something, an echo, a memory, or perhaps something even older that has never fully left. Mystery number 5: Rhyolite, the time loop mystery. Some towns fade away with the winds of time. They vanish into the desert, their stories forgotten as the earth reclaims them. Rhyolite, Nevada was one such town. Founded in 1904 during a brief gold rush, it grew quickly, boasting banks, a school, and even an opera house. In just 5 years, it went from a tent city to a bustling, thriving community. But as quickly as it had risen, it crumbled. By 1920, the gold had run out, and the people abandoned the town. The rails were torn up, the buildings left to rot in the scorching desert heat. But some places do not die. They simply refuse to be forgotten. Rhyolite is a ghost town now, a collection of crumbling ruins that scatter across the valley floor like bones in the desert. If you drive through the area today, it looks like any other deserted mining town: empty, silent, abandoned. But if you stay long enough, if you linger past midnight, you might hear something that does not belong: the unmistakable sound of a train whistle. It is not the sound of a modern train, not the distant rumble of an engine hauling goods across the desert. No, this whistle is different. It is an old, steady sound, a whistle that has not been heard in over a century. And yet, at exactly 3:14 a.m., people still report hearing it. A train whistle, loud and clear, as if a train is approaching a station that no longer exists, over tracks that have not been laid in decades. This is not just a case of folklore. It is a mystery that has been documented, studied, and experienced by dozens of visitors over the years. It started with a postal inspector passing through the area in 1911. As he rested near the old depot in Rhyolite, he wrote in his log, "Heard a train whistle from the west. Long, steady. But the tracks are gone. Nothing's been here for years." I waited. Since that night, reports have continued to flood in. Visitors, travelers, and even amateur investigators who've set up camp in the ruins all report the same thing: the whistle, the sound of a train that never arrives. Some hear it from different parts of the town, others from the old depot, but all describe it the same way: loud, clear, and impossible to ignore. In 2007, a group of amateur investigators set up motion-activated trail cameras in several ruins in Rhyolite. They left the site for 72 hours, returning with anticipation, hoping to capture some of the strange events that had been reported for years. When they reviewed the footage, what they saw sent chills down their spines. The cameras, placed carefully around the town's collapsed train depot, had caught something remarkable. At 3:14 a.m., all three cameras recorded the same event, a shadow moving across the frame, crossing from left to right, as though something or someone was walking through the ruins. It was not a person. It was not a trick of the light. It was something else, something that could not be explained. And then, for exactly 17 seconds, the footage went completely silent. No wind, no footsteps, no ambient noise. When the cameras resumed recording, one of them captured a still image, a single frame of an old steam engine, parked on invisible tracks. The image was frozen, but the timestamp read November 6, 1910, the year before the train stopped running. The investigators thought it was tampering. They assumed someone had meddled with the cameras or altered the footage. But the metadata was clear. There was no corruption in the files, no signs of interference. Just an eerie, unexplainable image of a train that had not existed for over a century. Visitors who have stayed overnight in Rhyolite report strange experiences. Watches stop at exactly 3:14 a.m. Cell phones reboot without explanation. People hear footsteps in the gravel, only to find no one there. Some claim to have heard the same phrase whispered over and over, as if it were echoing from the past, "Tickets, please." The most unsettling encounters occur at the old depot. In 1993, a historian visiting the site walked through the archway of the station and found himself in what appeared to be a restored lobby. He described gas lamps flickering, folded timetables on the counter, and a man behind the desk in uniform. But when he approached the desk and spoke to the man, the air around him seemed to crack like glass. Suddenly, the scene disappeared, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. The historian left the town shaken, his fingers burned as if he had touched an exposed wire. No one ever investigated the incident, and it was never reported. But it became part of the legend of Rhyolite, a town that refuses to let go of its past, a place where time seems to loop, and the ghost of the past still haunts the land. In 2015, an indie filmmaker tried to capture the eerie atmosphere of Rhyolite for a horror film. His crew spent the night in the town, hoping to film a chilling scene. But when they reviewed the footage from the cameras, something unsettling happened. All three cameras refused to record after 3:10 a.m. One of the cameras rebooted on its own, and when the footage was finally recovered, it showed the train platform fully intact, complete with shadows of passengers standing motionless, as if frozen in time. The filmmaker released the footage online as part of a teaser for the film, but when the audio was enhanced, something horrifying became clear. Faintly in the background, a voice could be heard, repeating the words, "Final boarding." But no one could explain where the voice had come from. No one could explain how it got there. Theories abound about what might be happening in Rhyolite. Some fringe researchers suggest that the town is caught in a time loop, a kind of temporal echo caused by electromagnetic anomalies from the nearby mineral deposits. Perhaps the land is imbued with some strange energy that causes time to repeat itself, over and over again, like a broken record. Others believe it is a more supernatural force at play, spirits of the past, trapped in the ruins, doomed to repeat the events of 1911, when the train last passed through. But no matter what the explanation, one thing is certain: Rhyolite is not like any other ghost town. Its past refuses to stay buried. And the train, like the town itself, still runs, even if no one can see it. Mystery number 6: Walker Lake, the sunken Cold War jet. Some machines break down. Some fade into history, their purpose long forgotten, rusting away in the desert. But some machines do not follow the rules. They refuse to die, even when their time has passed. Walker Lake, located in the desolate expanses of Nevada, is home to one such machine, a Cold War-era jet fighter that remains remarkably intact, deep beneath the water, its engine still running long after it should have stopped. Walker Lake is an isolated and cold body of water, nestled within Mineral County. To the locals, it is a place surrounded by mystery. Some say it is cursed. Others believe that something strange lies beneath the surface, something that should not be there. In 2005, a group of military-trained divers decided to investigate rumors that had swirled for decades that a missing Cold War-era jet had been lost somewhere over central Nevada, never to be found. No wreckage, no emergency distress signals, just static and a burst of electromagnetic interference from the vicinity of Walker Lake. Officially, the disappearance of the jet was marked as an accident. An experimental aircraft, perhaps, or just another military mishap. But there were whispers, stories shared in hushed tones, suggesting that the aircraft had disappeared for a reason. Something about the lake, about the area, did not seem right. The dive team that went in 2005 was not prepared for what they would find. At a depth of 118 feet beneath the surface, the divers located the jet, a Cold War-era fighter, pristine and untouched. It was submerged beneath a thick layer of silt, but the fuselage remained perfectly intact. The tail number on the aircraft matched a jet that had been officially declared lost in 1971 during a training exercise. But there was something strange about the condition of the aircraft. The cockpit glass was unbroken, and the interior was dry. The black box was still operational, powered by a battery type that had been obsolete since the 1980s. But it was not just the condition of the jet that raised alarm. The moment one of the divers reached out to retrieve the black box, something unnerving happened. He felt it, a pressure, as though someone was breathing inside the hull. Once the jet was brought back to the surface, the divers attempted to access the black box data. What they heard during the playback was nothing short of bizarre. The final moments of the pilot's flight did not sound like a crash. The pilot's voice was calm, steady, no sign of emergency, no panic in the words. Then there was a burst of static. And after that, another voice entered the channel, one that did not belong to the pilot. A woman's voice, speaking in coordinates that did not match any location in Nevada airspace. Then a strange message: Walker is not the destination. It is the gate. The lake was immediately closed off to further dives. The official explanation was that the lake bed had become unstable, but there was a much darker reason behind the sudden closure. Several divers, including those who had been part of the 2005 recovery mission, began to report strange sensations in the weeks following the dive. They suffered from recurring auditory hallucinations, hearing the unmistakable sound of a jet engine spooling up underwater. This was not the first time that something odd had happened at Walker Lake. In 1982, sonar operators had picked up strange mechanical motion beneath the surface. A drone was sent down to investigate, but when it returned, the video frames it captured were corrupted. One frame, however, showed something that sent chills through the team. The cockpit canopy of the jet was opening underwater, where the water remained completely undisturbed. The rumors surrounding the jet have only grown since that day. Some believe that the aircraft was not brought down by mechanical failure or a tragic accident. They believe that it was guided down, forced into the lake by some unknown force. It is as if the aircraft did not crash into the water. It entered the water, and whatever was beneath the surface had been waiting to accept it. In 2010, a fringe researcher in Reno published a paper speculating that Walker Lake sits atop a geomagnetic fracture point, an area where the Earth's magnetic field intersects in such a way that it interferes with military technology. According to his theory, this magnetic anomaly may have caused the jet to enter an area of space where time and signals behave unpredictably, trapping it in a place where it could not escape. The most disturbing suggestion came from this researcher. He proposed that the 1971 jet did not crash into Walker Lake. Instead, it entered a space, perhaps a dimensional gateway, or a place where time behaves differently. A space where machines can remember who they were long after their purpose has ended. Since that paper was published, strange occurrences in the area have continued. Fishermen report their sonar systems briefly going dark when crossing the northern section of the lake, particularly near the old test areas. Some even claim to have seen lights underwater at night, strange and bright, like something moving beneath the surface. And once every few years, someone will hear the unmistakable sound of a jet engine spooling up beneath the water, echoing from the depths of the lake. But when they dive to investigate, there is nothing there, just the eerie quiet of the water. The lake is still open to the public, but diving permits have been indefinitely suspended. The government has declared the area hazardous and prohibited further exploration. The military does not want anyone uncovering what lies beneath the surface. The lake is too deep, too dangerous, and perhaps too strange to understand. But the jet remains down there, waiting. And whatever force guided it into the water is still watching. There is a saying in Nevada: the desert does not forget. It buries its secrets deep within the earth, under layers of dust, rock, and silt. And sometimes it waits. It waits for the right moment, when the past and present collide, and the buried stories emerge once again. We have journeyed through the forgotten corners of Nevada, to places where the earth itself seems to remember what we have tried to forget. From the abandoned Mercury facility, where strange tunnels and voices still echo beneath the surface, to the submerged town of Street. Thomas, whose haunting mysteries resurface when the lake recedes. We have explored the scorching ground of Gerlac, where the earth pulses with energy, and the Tonopah test range, where voices from the past bleed through the concrete, reminding us that time is not always as linear as we believe. And then there is Rhyolite, where a train whistle that should have faded long ago still cuts through the stillness of the night, looping through time like a broken record. The land, it seems, is repeating something we may never fully understand. Finally, we come to Walker Lake, where a Cold War jet lies waiting, its black box still running, its final message a chilling reminder. Walker is not the destination. It is the gate. These are not stories of folklore. These are not tales spun by campfires or imagined by thrill seekers. Every one of these events has been documented, reported, and witnessed by those who were there. They are the real mysteries of Nevada, hidden beneath the sand, the water, and the earth. And the strangest part of it all, they are still happening. The world may try to erase these mysteries, to bury them beneath layers of secrecy, but Nevada's desert refuses to forget. It will keep whispering, keep revealing its secrets one by one, when we least expect it. And perhaps that is the most disturbing mystery of all. What other stories are still hidden in the dark corners of this vast and forgotten land? Because, as we have seen in Nevada, the most disturbing mysteries are not just in the past. They are unfolding right now, beneath the surface, in places the government, the tourists, and even history itself have forgotten to erase. The question is, what happens when the past refuses to stay buried? If these 6 were real, how many others are still waiting, buried beneath the earth, under our feet, in the places we never thought to look? Maybe it is time to start looking. The next forgotten mystery could be closer than you think.